Yo, what's up? My name's Clarence.
And I'm DJ Nuna.
And you're listening to Up in the Air,
a podcast on our thoughts, moods, and experiences on the personal, political, and cultural world around us. Come float with us.
In this week's episode, we have a very special guest. He's a 3D animator, an artist, designer, 22-year-old music enthusiast, and most importantly, a dear friend of the show, Ebrima Jassey. Today, we got a very special guest, a friend of the show, Mr. Ebrima Jassey. What's good?
What's going on, y'all? Happy to be here. Thank you for having me back once again. This is our second time, right? Like the first time was with Annabelle. So yeah, I'm happy to be back.
We were really excited to have you on just because, we've gotten to know you better since then. And it's been a crazy time since school ended. So
yeah, no shit.
Again, and kind of, here we want to ask you some questions about design and all that stuff. And so we're just excited to get into that.
Tight. Yeah, it's fun. I'm glad to be here just because I really, really enjoyed it the first time. I'd never been on a podcast before, so happy to make sure that the second time I'm on a podcast is once again with you guys. So yeah, this is gonna be tight.
Yeah, it's fire. I feel like it's funny because we are friends outside of this, and so in the interview process, you're kind of taking it differently. You're like, yeah, I'm on camera, or I'm
right.
on podcast. It's kind of weird,
right?
Yeah, it'll just be like our phone call that we had a couple of days ago.
Yeah, it'll be chill with a little bit of brand sprinkled in, just enough.
Just a little ad here and there,
Right. Hashtag sponsored. All right, let's get it.
But just real quick, I want to ask you how's COVID been treating you? How's quarantine and all that? Just being at the house.
Just in general, it's been a lot of different things, right? Because I, up until March, lived in Seattle. And then when COVID hit, I was like, oh shit, so you know how our quarter ended early, right? So I was like, oh shit, I have all this time, let's go. My dad calls me and he's like, yo, so I need you to come home. And I was like, what are you talking about? I just got free time, told me to come home. It's not gonna be that bad. The COVID thing it's gonna go away. He's like, no, come home. And he pulls up to my apartment and makes me go home. So I go home and I've been back with my parents since March. And it's been really nice, kind of just chilling with the family. It's the first time we're all together since I was a kid. And yeah, it's been in that aspect really nice. But trying to do school online was really stressful. So with everything that happened in June as well, it's been nice kind of spending the summer trying to find the balance between working on my own stuff and learning to take care of myself. And it's definitely been a transformative 6 months. For some reasons I'm more happy about than others, but I think for the most part it's been interesting. Learned a lot about myself and just things I do and don't want to do, and just how to I don't know, just take care of myself a little bit better, I think. So
for sure.
Yeah.
I feel that question is so loaded, how it's so hard to answer it, to know where
distinctly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I'm trying super hard because I ramble a lot. So Jubilee was like, yeah, the show's 45 minutes this time. I was like, okay, cool. I'm gonna make sure everything is super condensed and jam-packed and stuff. But yeah, in general, that question is just, there's so many aspects to it for different people, right? So yeah, how have y'all been? In a nutshell.
I guess I've been all right, just taking things slowly. I think I've been really it's kind of nice, being alone at some times, not having to go out, not having that social obligation sometimes, just so that you can really, relax and think, just be
right.
Introspection. It could be a bad thing, it could be, it depends, but I think it's been nice. I really valued that solo time, but I am also really really just wanting to get back out there and have fun, do things, and hang out with friends and all that. So
yeah. I feel both of you. Even Ebrima, when you said the past 6 months, that's just always so alarming for me that it's been half a year since we isn't that? I feel time is not real. But I think at the beginning of quarantine, I actually was enjoying it. I was like, wow, this is the best my mental health has ever been. I'm able to sleep and work on myself, I guess. But, feeling a little burnt out, feeling a little bit antsy, I guess. last week I didn't even go out, really. I didn't even go on the walk. And I finally like walked to Target on Friday. And I was like,
baby steps.
I was like, this is the way I treat myself. And I bought a canvas to paint on.
It's such a bourbon mom. You're like, you know what we're gonna do to take care of ourselves? We're gonna go to fucking Target and just see that. I love that.
But yeah, you know, I'm really excited to talk today. And yeah, Zoom calls with Ebrima are honestly the best. They really do last like 2 to 3 hours.
No thanks to my tendency to talk a lot and Jubilee's kind of like inability to tell me to stop, and so like they last a lot longer than this shit.
Yeah, but you know, so the reason why we really wanted you on the show though is because, you know, aside from being a friend and, you know, a collaborator on a lot of things, you are also in the same design program as us, and you do a lot of freelance stuff too. But do you want to just like dive in real quick and kind of do a brief overlook of what, you know, explain like what you do and kind of how you got into it?
Yeah, sure. Well, I guess my current kind of gig or whatever is I'm a 3D animator and artist, I guess, / designer. And like for the most part, what I do is like I make promotional motion graphics for like musicians and like people with like brands and creatives and stuff like that. And I've started delving into like, I guess, other things, but for the most part, I just like working with musicians and making shit like that. And then like making art for myself that just ties in things that I've been influenced by, be that music or like, you know, animation and just things like that. So that's kind of like my main gig for now. I just like making shit that I think looks cool. But I started off this way. As a kid, I just played a lot of fantasy video games. I drew a lot, I read a lot. And like super young, I wanted to like be a writer or like be an artist or something like that. But I ended up moving to the Gambia when I was, I want to say 11 years old, and realized very quickly that what art meant over there wasn't something I really wanted to be a part of, and that everyone I knew who was like an artist or something of that nature was someone who like either taught in schools or like, you know, painted billboards or signs. And I was like, if that's what art means, I don't know if I want that necessarily. And growing up in an environment where my parents were both African immigrants, and I'm sure like all of you can relate to this, being like children of immigrants yourself, the idea of success is like going into STEM or law or something that has a lot of money. And so for a long time, I was down that path of like, oh, I want to go be like a doctor, like a lawyer, like something. And somehow, by the time I was a junior, I thought I wanted to go into like neuroscience, neurosurgery, because I read Ben Carson's book, and I was like, oh shit, like that's where it's at. Like the money's, like the bag is fat. I was like, let's go. But then I graduated from high school, and I'm like, I don't know if I actually want to do that. And so I spent my first maybe 2 years at UW kind of just bouncing around trying to figure out what exactly that was, and kind of stumbled into design like my sophomore year of school by doing this internship kind of on accident. And long story short, figured out I really liked design, figured out I could use design as a way to work with music and work in music industries, because it's like what I've always really loved. Just didn't know there was a way to do that without being able to rap. And so got into the design program. I've been here 2 years now, right? And this is like our 3rd year, and it's my 5th year at UW, finishing that. So yeah, in a nutshell, that is me for the most part.
Nice and condensed.
Yeah, we're trying.
Yeah, I'm curious, like, how'd you make that connection, or when did you make that connection between, like, you know, doing design and, like, also, it's like, between music, what you loved as a kid, and then, like, getting to school, like, how'd you make that connection there, you know?
Actually, it's funny how this shit happens, right? Because, like, my freshman year of college, like I said, I wanted to go into CS. And so all the while I was always going after these STEM things, I was spending all of my time focusing on music. Like I spent a lot of time on like Reddit and like hip hop heads and a bunch of these different like Kanye Tiller and a bunch of like blogs and stuff, reading about hip hop and stuff. And a lot of the time I'd be on there and see this art people would make. And I always thought that was the coolest thing ever. And I'd ask, like, how did you do that? People would be like, oh, Photoshop, Illustrator, After Effects, whatever. So I was spending all the time. I should have been doing my CS homework, like making shit in like Illustrator or whatever. And it wasn't until I won that same sophomore year that I joined arts and entertainment, right? And learned that there was this entire world outside of just like people who make the music, who actually like run it behind the scenes, all that good stuff. And so I was like, oh shit, you can actually do this. And like it was like meeting people like, you know, like Perry Gabriel and stuff like that. But I think the biggest connect for me was like learning about Vlad Zepetov, who I'd known about since I was in high school, just unconsciously, the guy who made like all of like the Kendrick album covers and stuff, who went to UW and was like the director of A&E. So I was like, oh shit, like if he can do it, then I probably can somehow. And so it was kind of through that a little bit that I ended up centering on design and leaving all the STEM stuff behind, much to the, I think, regret of my parents at first because they were unsure about it. But yeah, here we are, and it's working out well enough, I feel like. So yeah.
Yeah, I like how you brought up the A&E thing, the arts and entertainment thing, because I feel like that was definitely kind of, you know, my introduction to sort of that music and I guess art kind of intersection, you know. So
For sure.
I'm totally with you on that.
Yeah. For those of you that don't know, Ebrima served as the A&E multimedia designer in the past year.
I honestly always forget that because it ended so soon.
Short year.
Short and sweet.
Floyd for
Yeah, but yeah, I was the multimedia designer for this last school year. I was a volunteer for like 2 years before that, and it's like it was a very big part of my college experience. So it's cool to see. I always forget, but the both of y'all are on the team this year, so like that's just crazy to see. And it always reminds me how long I've been at this fucking school. Like it's my 5th year here. And I was like, exactly. I went from volunteer to employee to like alumni of that organization, and it's just crazy. But yeah,
we are all the 5th year gang, right? So
right, yes sir. I'm not here by myself. Like it always makes me feel better.
But we're old. Like I can't believe we're going to our 5th year and it's a pandemic, and that's gonna be our senior year. You
There's
know,
a lot of shit going on. I'm just hoping we have a graduation though, because I just need that for my parents. Like I feel like they need to
that.
walk.
The immigrant parents need that.
For sure.
But yeah, I remember earlier this year hearing about Vlad and seeing his work with A&E too, and that's super cool to see. Like UW grads go into the professional world and go into like freelance and be really successful. And I think we also wanted to talk to you today because you are a very successful like freelancer, and especially in
I don't know about that. We're trying, but
well, you're like up and coming, you know. But you, I think in the design program that we're in, we've talked about this, but they really don't encourage freelance work for some reason. But we did want to talk about like what does that process really look like? How did you get into freelance? And I think that these are things that people oftentimes have questions about, but don't really know like where to get started, whether it's like about your rates or valuing your work or things like that. But that's kind of what we're going to talk about today.
Tight.
Yeah, but can you tell us a little bit about like your specific work, like with your 3D animation? Like how did you get into that specifically, and how has it grown over the years?
Okay, excellent question. I'm glad you asked. Let me see. So I've always really loved animation. Since I was really young. Like I said, I grew up like playing video games and stuff and watching a bunch of anime. Like I think if it wasn't Naruto, it may have been like, you know what Hamtaro is?
Yes.
Yeah, I used to watch Hamtaro when I was a kid, and like a bunch of shows like that, and Naruto and stuff. And it was interesting because anime is different from like American cartoons, where it's like serialized, right? Where like the next episode connects to the one before it. And so I remember being really hooked by that and wanting to like tell stories. That's always kind of been a thread of mine. And so getting into college, I wanted to learn how to animate because like one of the ways I saw myself working in music was like, oh, I can like music videos for people that are animated. I can do this and do that. And so I at first tried to learn how to do it in the more traditional sense. Like there's this dude called Tristan Zamit who does like super dope animated music videos. And I was like, this is super cool. But I learned that it meant you had to know how to draw first. And that was something I always loved, but I was never good at. And so I was like, oh, that's kind of axe. Like that kind of sucks. And so I branched into After Effects a little bit, but I still didn't have the skills or the patience, honestly. So I don't remember exactly how it was I landed on 3D stuff, but it was the summer of 2018, I want to say, that I was like, you know what, let me just give it a shot and like actually sit down and learn it. And so I bootlegged it, obviously, because we do not support the man out here if you don't have to. It's like $1,000. So I was like, okay, let me just bootleg this. I'll pay them later, whatever. And I started playing around with it. I was like, you know, when I make it, I'll just slide this donation. Like, let's just both be quiet about it. Everything's cool. But like, yeah, I started that summer, and I was like, oh, I actually really like this. This is dope. And so I started playing around with it a bit. but never really knew exactly what I wanted to do with it. So leading into 2019, I just played around with it more, kind of started building what I thought was my style. I just loved making things that, images that I felt like I got from music that I listened to, just because I'd always been something that I had, but I never knew the right medium to like communicate it because I couldn't draw. I wasn't really that good at design yet, but I knew that 3D was a way that I could directly show you what it was that I saw. And so like that was fun for me. And the freelancing kind of came along at the end of my the end of my junior year, which was last summer, when I made this Isaiah Rashad, remember like the Isaiah Rashad boombox thing? I made that and it did relatively well. And I remember somebody reached out to me and I didn't recognize what her handle was, but she was like, hey, what are your rates? And I remember saying like, I didn't really know what that was. Like, I didn't know what that meant. And Perry's like a huge mentor figure of mine because he's done like music industry work. So she DMs me and I'm like, let me check out who this is. And she's Isaiah Rashad's publicist. So I was like, oh shit, like actually this is kind of important. And so I run to Perry and I'm like, yo, what do I do? Like, I don't know what to do. And he was like, hey, it's okay. Like, just ask her what it's for. Because the thing is like, they have big budgets, like don't fumble your bag basically. So I go back to her and I'm like, hey, well, yeah, sure. What is it for? And she's like, oh, like I was just kind of inquiring. And I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. But after that conversation, I was like, okay, I need to know what rates are. Like, I don't know what that is. And then this other kid reaches out to me and he's like, hey, like I'm a rapper in Georgia. Can you make me a thing? And I was like, yeah, sure. But I had no idea what to charge him. And so I was like, oh, like, I don't know, like $120 or something. He's like, okay, that sounds cool. And I was like, okay. And so I make it for him. And then what I realized, and this is something I kind of learned over time as well, trying to do freelance stuff in the past, is that rates as like hourly especially are a bad idea for the most part, because you can never predict how long things are going to take, and usually will end up kind of cheating yourself. And so what I found out was better was to like set a fixed rate for certain things. Mm-hmm. So for example, when someone says, oh, how much are your animations? I say, oh, like for 15 seconds and for like this shape, it's like this amount, and like depending on what you want, it goes up or down. And that's kind of like how I price now, like on a sliding scale, is like, oh, like how long is it going to be? Like how much detail do you want? We'll talk about it and then I'll give you like a quote. So I guess, yeah, in a nutshell, that's kind of like how I got into the 3D design shit, and like pricing wise, is kind of how I've started figuring it out, is like bundling stuff because it's just easier that way.
Yeah, I always felt like it was so difficult to like value your work, monetarily. Mm-hmm. So I it's definitely like you're still kind of learning that, right? Or
exactly.
Yeah.
It's tough because I feel like the hardest thing, and I'm sure you can relate, both y'all designers and photographers, is the kind of thing where it's like, you're like, like I don't want to charge that much money. Like this person's my friend. Like what if I tell them the price and they say they don't want to shoot or they don't want this and I need the money? But it's the kind of thing where you learn that you have to value yourself or else you get burned. Like I've like taken jobs where like I wish I had asked for more. Like working on it, I'm like, why didn't I fucking ask for more? I know I could have. And I'm like kicking myself. And it's like going through that stuff and kind of like being burned teaches you to like be more careful next time so that doesn't happen, and you take care of yourself and respect yourself as well, because it's the kind of thing where like I would ask like Perry, like, oh, or I would ask, so there's this guy Dan Sanford who works for Foreign Family, and so he was someone who was like kind of like a mentor figure to me once I first started doing freelance stuff, because he does similar stuff. So I would ask him how much he thinks I should charge, and he'd give me this number, and to me I look at that, I'm like, that's a lot of fucking money, man. Like I don't know if like someone should be paying me that much. But it was only after like I didn't listen to him and I would do stuff that I'm like, I get it now, because it's at the end of the day, it's like there's that saying where it's like when you're paying somebody for something, you're not paying for the amount of time that they're spending on it, you're paying for like all the failures and all the stuff they learn and all the practice they do. So you're paying for them as a package versus like this product they're making for you. So yeah, it's like it's always a scary thing. Like I don't know what it's like for you guys in photography, but like how are you pricing necessarily? Do you price by shoot? Do you price by like, what's that like on that end of it?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a similar process as to you, because I think Clarence and I have definitely undersold ourselves before. And I think as photographers, I think people don't realize that like the shoot itself takes like 1 to 3 hours, depending on what it is. Editing can take like 1 to 3 hours as well. And once again, you're paying for the craft, you're paying for the editing, you're paying, like, these are skills that we have built up over the years, and not just anyone. And that's why you can't really limit it to like hourly work, because I don't know, you just can't really, once again, like put a price on that time. But I shared about this on Twitter earlier, but I remember when one of my first shoots, senior shoots, it was this girl that I was not even friends with, but acquaintances with, and she had this like super elaborate Matrix themed senior shoot. She had like 3 ideas. This was at the time that I didn't have my fucking license yet, so I
The Matrix?
Yes, like I had not even watched The Matrix at that point, so I was like, okay, I'm just gonna go with it. Her dad was there, like hyping her up, and it was like I got to her place. It was bizarre. Honestly, the photos turned out well, but a bizarre shoot. I get to her place. She wasn't even ready, so I sat there for like 30 minutes. That's like a red flag. Like you can't take more of my time. But I remember saying, hey, is it okay if I charge you like $25 for the shoot? And she was like, 25? Like, I thought we were friends. And I was like,
what?
I was really like, are you for real? $25? And her original offer was a meal, and I was like, hey, I'm sorry, but I don't have time for a meal. Like, I also don't want to. But yeah, and after that point, I really realized once again, Ebrima, like, you have to kind of have really set concrete prices for each package deal or type of shoot. Now, and I think this is still considered on like the more affordable side, but I charge $110 for a 1 hour shoot, and it comes with a pack of 30 photos, and even 30 photos is a lot compared to other photographers. So that's my deal currently, but it definitely took a lot of years to build up the courage to say straight up, like, it's 110,
right.
Like no negotiations, because bruh, it's my time. And
I feel like, you know, when I like when I started out doing photography, like it was more out of a hobby, you know, so I was like, hey, let's go shoot, you know, like I'm asking you to go with me, that sort of thing. So like definitely having a rate was super new to me, and then eventually I was like, people are telling me to do shoots, and they'll be like, oh, can you do it and make it look like this or make it look like that, and like they'll give me a bunch of inspo, but at the same time I'm like, well, like now it's different than a hobby, and like,
right.
So it's not that I don't enjoy it, but it's just like not as creatively fun for me, you know. So yeah, I guess like for a while I was pretty like turned off by the idea of just like doing photography for money, you know. And then I think like I started getting back into it like in college, and so that was nice, and like being a little bit more confident about my work. But yeah, I feel like I think I charge the same amount as Jubilee, but I hate it when people are like, hey, can you just maybe like, I didn't bring enough cash today, like can we do this for now?
Try again. No.
Yeah.
Like, I hate that so much, because it's like at the end of the day, like if somebody really valued the work that you do, they would be paying you, know what I mean? Like I think it's like Jubilee said earlier, it takes a lot of courage to like learn to stand up for yourself and to walk away from stuff, even if it seems like it'd be good for you. Like there have definitely been moments of weakness I've had where I'm like, damn, I kind of need the money, so I might just like take this deal and like run with it. But there have been other times where it's like, you know what, at the end of the day, it's like you kind of have to like remember your integrity as an artist and respect the stuff that you make and respect yourself, because it's like, if you don't, you're just giving people an excuse to like walk over you later. If you do that and someone else tries to like, you know, contact you, the person who did that walked over you last time can be like, well, I got to walk over them, so you shouldn't let them, you know, stand up and not let you walk over them, you know what I mean? So it's like, it's a kind of a trickle down thing too. But yeah, I feel you.
Yeah, you can't like throw a deal and then have someone be like, well, you gave them a deal, like I thought it was that
exactly. I thought we were friends, bro. Like,
and then you're like, well, I mean, I barely know you, but you know, it's like,
I hate it when they hit you with but we're friends, and I'm like, I mean,
you should be paying me. Like, you don't understand how much this means to me. Like,
for real, I think I'm really lucky to have friends that without a doubt are willing to, like, even I shot a lot of my friends' senior portraits this summer and did not ever have like an issue of them trying to ask me for a free shoot, which is, I really appreciate that. And it's just a reminder that you want to work with artists that respect you, because if they're trying to take advantage of you, you don't want to, it's not a sustainable relationship. Like, you're not going to want to work with them in the future. So I think, thankfully, I don't think I've really encountered that many instances where I've been like dubbed, or I've heard some really bad stories of people like actually like completing the work and then they get ghosted after like sending the work in, and that's really messed up. So I'm personally glad that I've had a pretty positive experience. But even, I mean, I had a similar experience as Ebrima, where someone asked me about my rates and I was like, I don't know, and then I went to Ebrima because I knew that he had experience, and I was like, bruh, I don't even know, like, what do I even charge for a logo? Like, what comes in a package of logos? Like, do I need to, like, do an icon, or, like, what comes in that, too? So I've just been trying to figure out, yeah, what my work is valued, but I don't know. It's a process for sure.
It definitely is. Like, it helps to have people who like know, because like for me, like Perry is someone who like no matter what I always run to because he has the experience, right? And so like it's always nice to have people who like kind of have guidelines for you, but you ultimately like end up kind of building your own kind of through like trial and error, like you said, but also just like taking tidbits and things here and there from like people who you know like kind of know their shit or in similar kind of lanes as you. So yeah, it's definitely a journey for sure.
Yeah.
You know what I find dope is that like in your work though, you do have like a sort of style, and I feel it's nice that like when artists or when people are reaching out to you for your work, like they're looking for like that kind of style, you know what I mean? Like they're looking for your taste, and that's nice. And I think like, you know, I was wondering how you came to, you know, have this sort of, you know, look and feel to your work, and if it's like, is it something that's constantly shifting for you, or is it, you know, like how is it developed for you?
It's the thing is that like I have things that like it's hard to phrase because it's like I have a certain kind of spirit of what I want, but what that kind of means translates differently. So it's the kind of thing where like, I'll hear people say like, it's good because you have a style, and they're like, I don't really know what you mean. Like I guess that the core elements that like are what's important to me that you can see translated no matter what it looks like is like, I like having things that are like detailed. I like putting in little like Easter eggs here and there. I like things that remind me of being a child, just because I feel like at the end of the day, like the thing that I've always chased and what I've always enjoyed about like things like anime and like the Ghibli movies and just like the video games I played was like that kind of childlike wonder, I think. And so like whatever that means and how I translate it kind of changes day to day, but the core values and constants are always like find little details you think are interesting and pack them in somehow, things for people to find, and then just like finding a way to make it feel like you're watching like a cartoon or something. And I think it's changed a lot. I think I've always just really liked super bright things. Sometimes I like dark things, but I think anime in general and the kind of expressiveness of it is what's always kind of permeated the things that I make, just because I think what I've always enjoyed about anime in general is that it has a tendency to be very over the top and exaggerated in a way that American cartoons are not. And I think that goes from like the way that the characters talk and the way they kind of emote with their faces to like sometimes like, you know how like if you're watching an anime, right, and someone is reacting to something, their face gets super exaggerated, or like they're like sometimes their faces are like they like what they call chibi, which is like it's like a super like baby face and it's like big eyes and shit. It's like I think the expressiveness of that and the ability to kind of communicate emotions in the way that American cartoons could not, something that was really attractive to me. And so that's something I've always tried to incorporate, and I think I'm starting to incorporate now more with like using like symbols to like represent like things happening. Like for example, like the no name thing, there's like the 3 little lines shooting out of like the light flashing on and off, or like the shoe tap on like the stuff I made like way back when. I think just expressiveness and like childlike wonder or whatever is like what I've always kind of strived toward, but it's something that changes so much that I don't know if I found my style yet, but I think the core values of what it is, at least like philosophically, is like there. I don't know, but I don't know if that answered your question at all.
No, I mean, I think it makes sense. I feel like I guess it is difficult to kind of nail down a look and feel. It's more just like, yeah, like as you said, the spirit of your work, and I think that perfectly kind of encapsulates, you know, like it's just like it's not stylistic. It's more just like, you know, spiritually.
Spiritually.
Like embedded in the work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think I've ever heard you explicitly share kind of the meaning behind your style, because I think it is very unique and iconic to you. And like when you see something like a color palette like that, or like the shapes, or like the way that the objects are shaped and things like that, you definitely like think, oh, this is like Ebrima's work, right? It's very easily recognizable. But now that you've really talked about how it's really supposed to bring those like childhood like emotions, like kind of that nostalgia, and then with the expressive like little thingies that come out of your compositions, that makes total sense. And yeah, I think my favorite piece of yours is, I like the Tyler one. I think that one got like a lot of clout, kind of. Ew, I don't like that one. But that one, you really went off there. I think I remember sharing that post and I was like, remember me when you're famous.
It's funny because like that Tyler thing that's like kind of what got me, what gave me the ability to do freelance stuff, honestly. And like what made me realize that maybe this was something I could pursue a little bit more, just because like I mentioned, I'd always wanted to do things that kind of packed detail in like that. And it's funny thing is like, I was looking back at the Tyler thing and I was like, wow, a lot of this is really bad. Like in comparison to like the standard I hold myself to now in terms of like what my objects look like and what lighting looks like, everything is super sharp, rough edges in that composition. Mm-hmm. And so growth is a funny thing to like think about when thinking about art like that. But I think for sure that was like a really important piece to me, because I had not thought about it that much at all. I was like, well, like it might be cool to make like some compositions for like albums I like. And so that was the very first one of what was supposed to be many. I was gonna be like, because the internet and like a bunch of other albums, and the Tyler one ended up being enough for me, where I was like, oh, okay, well I guess I have all this commission stuff, maybe I shouldn't go to work and like just do this instead. And so yeah, it was fun to make for sure.
I mean, also 3D composition is that shit takes time, because you have to render that, and I'm sure like your computer goes crazy when you export.
It does.
So I mean, major props, because I think that like that's kind of like a medium in graphic design that takes so much more like time. And also After Effects is the most difficult software in my opinion.
Don't even get
I haven't even tried like Cinema 4D, but those softwares really freak me out. Whenever I hear in class like, you have to use this, I'm like, fuck no. Like I remember Joe was like, I thought I beat that software and never had to revisit it.
I miss Joe so much. I miss that VCD group chat for what it was. But I definitely like, what's funny about Cinema 4D is that it looks very daunting, but it's actually one of the easier softwares to learn once you get the basics down. Because to explain it bluntly, everything is built around, you know how like, this is funny how it ties back, because you know how when we were freshmen and we took the design drawing class, right? Something that he said was always, oh, everything is cubes. I was like, what the fuck is he talking about? And then I learned how to do design work in 3D. And I was like, he's right. It is literally everything is cubes. And it's funny because the way that it works, I'll try to make this quick again, is you start off with a cube and everything builds out from there. You can like make a cube kind of round and you can like manipulate it. And so almost everything you end up seeing that I've ever made started off as a cube, which is like the crazy part. Once you learn that, like it's crazy how quickly you can learn how to just get faster with it. And what's even better about it, I think, is like the knowledge that you learn about in like being in the design program with like Photoshop and like Illustrator, it all kind of ties together, because my workflow is like starts in Cinema 4D but like branches off back and forth from all the other softwares. And so yeah, in some it's just really fun seeing like how that it all ties in and so much translates over. So I'd recommend trying it for sure, just because you'd be surprised at how much you actually already know from other softwares and just generally in the way that you think when making stuff. So yeah,
definitely. I think what is really special about our design program is they really like throw at you the foundational skills that I feel like it's hard to get from just learning on your own, because I think all three of us, we kind of dabbled in design a little bit before actually getting into the program, but then there were so many like rules, honestly, that I was just unaware of. And I think rules are both a blessing and a curse. Like it's nice to have those guidelines, but it's also, I think it is very limiting when it comes to creative freedom. And the more that I'm just learning about the history of design, I'm kind of like, wow, we really need to like go outside the box a little bit. Outside. For those of you who don't know,
That had to be on purpose.
one of our group projects was called Outside the Box. But I don't know, there's just a lot to learn and unlearn in design, I think I've come to realize.
Definitely. For you guys, I don't know if we're short on time, but have you noticed the way that you think over the last 2 years in like design influencing the way that you approach art? Because for me, I've noticed, and I very recently noticed this, that the way I've started to think about approaching design has started bleeding into my art, and it was really giving me a hard time. Very recently, where like, I would sit down, I'd be like, oh, okay, I have this idea, and I would do this thing where I would sit down and I'd plan it all out, I would mood board, I would do all this stuff, and I'd be like, okay, cool, we can start. But because I had this mountain of stuff that I had to do now, it made it so much harder when I could have just sat down with this idea that was like a little bit of a draft and kind of just fleshed it out myself. And it wasn't until very recently that I was like, damn, what's wrong? What's happening is that I'm trying to make art by designing when that's not what I should be doing. I should be trying to make art by making art and just letting it kind of happen, where design is very planned and kind of like methodical. And so my question for you guys is like, do you think, or have you noticed instances where design has like kind of influenced the ways you approach arts, like photography and things like that? And are there like positives and negatives to it?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like with design or having design in my mind, like I've been very obsessed with the craft, you know? And so the same way you explained it, like you keep thinking about like all the steps before you actually start the process like of making whatever you're making, you know?
Right.
And so I think it's funny like how Julie just mentioned, like you got to unlearn some of the things you learned, and like it's, I think in this sense, like it's not necessarily unlearning, but it's more like just switching gears, you know? Like sometimes it is just about getting your thoughts onto the paper, you know, and like you can kind of formulate it afterwards, or like just getting the initial expression out there first, which is super important. But I feel like also just with design, I've been very critical of a lot of things, you know, and so I'm not too quick to say like, oh, I like something, and I'm also like, especially if something's that's super hyped up or, you know, whatever, like some new sneakers come out and I'm like, well, I mean, I don't like them like that. Like they're cool, you know what I mean? Or it's the other way around, where it's like something comes out and people are like, that shit's fucking ugly. And I'm like, well, the concept's cool, you know, like, like, okay, for example, I don't know if I'd rock them, but those Yeezy foams, the ones that look like fucking like low-key Crocs, I was like, the concept's kind of cool, bro. I'm not gonna lie. Like, the shape is way better than some Crocs. Like, I was like, I'm kind of fucking with it, but I don't know if I can rock it.
Right.
Hey,
I don't know about that one, Chief. Like, that's the one that looks like they're like the salmon, like people are like they're like fish fillet shoes, like the. I gotta make sure.
With the crazy like.
That shit looks crazy, bro. I don't know about that. It's the kind of thing, right, where it's like I could see someone wearing it and I'm like, that shit looks fire. But if I were to wear it, I'd be like, I don't know if it's for me, kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I like coming like from a design aspect though. I'm just like through these lenses, like I can
through
see
the lens.
Pushing the envelope is kind of like different. You know what I mean? So
how might we revolutionize?
Yeah.
Footwear?
I mean, like different's not always better, but I think it is kind of nice and like.
I think different is good,
right? Like,
yeah.
So, yeah, design has definitely brought some more perspective, and also like helped me refine it to a point where I can definitely be more critical and have reason to, you know, like reinforce what I think, which is nice, you know.
Yeah, I feel like I mean, it was like a strength and a weakness for me, but I'm a big picture type of thinker, and so design has taught me to think a lot more critically and be more detail oriented. But I actually like a couple weeks ago during like this interview, the interviewer asked me, what's the difference between art and design? And I was like, okay, that's actually kind of hard to answer, but what I just felt, what really came to mind for me was that art is really based on expression, and you can just there's no rules with art, to be honest. And that's why I have a hard time calling myself an artist rather than a designer, because I think that there's like a very clear difference between being an artist and being a designer, because I feel like I'm really, really tied down by the rules of design. And I think that's because that's a result of the program that we're in, because they're kind of like, if you don't have a fucking justification for your design choice, then it's useless. And I like that is really ingrained in my brain, where they're like, I chose the color yellow because it makes you feel like, I don't know, it's like sometimes you can just use the color yellow because you stuck with the color yellow, you know?
Right.
So I'm really just trying to figure out like, yeah, when is it appropriate to break those rules, and it's okay to be expressive with design too, which I think that gets kind of lost in translation. And I do think that there is a divide in our program, because there's some people that lean more towards like the art spectrum, and then some that lean more towards like the design side of things. So it's hard to find myself, right? It's like throwing some shade. No, I definitely am struggling with that, but I feel you, Ebrima, because sometimes I'm just trying to make something and I'm like, wow, nothing's coming out because I'm just overthinking. Am I breaking rules? Am I what will my design peers think because they approach it with that lens? So
it's definitely tough. Like it's definitely, like you said, a blessing and a curse, just because I feel like there are benefits of like thinking a little bit more critically, but at the same time it can hinder ideas just as quickly, just because you spend so much time thinking about them, you don't actually go and you do them. And so like I feel like for me, I was so excited to find, like, being a sophomore, right, and learning about design as an entire thing and as a major and everything. I was so excited to finally put a name to something that I felt like I was doing or wanting to do. But the further along I got in the design program and just learning more about design, the world of it as a general, the more I was like, I don't actually know if I want to call myself a designer. Like, I think about, like, besides the history of the program and everything, I think about the way it kind of constrains you into thinking certain ways, and like, honestly, like the way that I think about like our program in general. And I'm like, I don't know if design is something that I feel like I'm connected to. Like, if someone were to ask me, what are you? And I were to say I'm a designer, I immediately like would want to kind of counter it by saying like, not in the traditional sense, because I don't know if I like the idea of what that is necessarily. And so it's been interesting, like I'm almost having like an identity crisis of like leaning back to identifying more with being an artist than being a designer, which is like really weird, but it's funny and it makes sense, because I remember when I was in 5th grade, we had this, I've probably told the story like a million times, but I always tell it, we had like a graduation, and it was like a moment in my life where I felt like I finally knew what I wanted to do, right? Obviously 5th grade, you know everything. And so they were like, you know, come up to the microphone, take your diploma, and like say what you want to be. And like I walk up to the microphone and I'm like, I want to be an artist. And my mom is like sitting with my aunt, and she's like, did you hear your son? He wants to be an artist. And they just laugh like, oh, it'll blow over in like 5 months or something. So like here we are, and I'm like in design school, maybe gonna be an artist now. I don't know, but it's really, I don't know. It is what it is.
Well, I feel you, because I think, I mean, we've been learning this more throughout the past couple months, but I think that there's a lot in the design industry that is just extremely inaccessible to the public world, and there's a lot of like pretentiousness behind the title of being a designer. So I think like that was kind of one of the questions I wanted to explore, was like, what are your thoughts on like the gatekeeping of the design industry? Or even the creative community, because I think that sometimes people get caught up over like, oh, am I a creative, or am I creative enough to be in this space? Or I think even me being intimidated to call myself an artist, because a couple like people I've worked with in the past, they're like, you know, I want to support your art, I really love your art, and that always takes me back, because I'm like, I don't even know if it's art, but it is art, because you put your everything into it, and you like you made that specifically, like you put your own style and work into that. But yeah, I just want to hear your thoughts on like the gatekeeping. That's like a term that I just learned within the last couple months, where it's kind of like making it exclusive towards others or a group of people in particular. But yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
It's interesting, right? Because like whenever I think about that concept of gatekeeping, I always think about it like there's like the traditional sense of like design, right? Like I feel like you're right in that a lot of people kind of walk around with like a pretentious nature, and that they feel like they're better than someone because like, oh, like I went to school and I know what Bauhaus is, and like I know like what kerning is, and like I know like what justified type is, and like how many lines should be on like a paragraph or whatever. And so it's like they look at themselves in a certain way and like look down on people who like learned all their shit on YouTube or like kind of by trial and error. Mm-hmm. And so there's like this like, it's so stupid because like none of us would be here if someone else didn't open a door for us.
Right.
And like it's like something that, you know, Alvin Benavides, right, like works at Billboard, like used to go to UW. He was the program coordinator for, or I was outreach back then, outreach coordinator for A&E like years ago. Something that he always says is like, you know, lift as you climb, which is like help people up. And I remember being like a super scared like freshman, not knowing what I wanted to do at all, reaching out to him because he was at the time interning at Complex and doing all this stuff. And I was like, hey, like I don't really know if you know me, but like I was in a high school program where you were like a mentor, and like I'd love to sit down with you and just talk to you. And it was through him that I like gained so many connections. Like I met Perry through him, I met Raph through him, and it was like through those people that I met other people. I learned about A&E, and I would not be who I am, like where I am, if it wasn't for that connection. Mm-hmm. And so like the idea of gatekeeping is like, it's so dumb because it's like we're all in this together, and like no one is going to steal your spot from you because no one can steal your vision or your execution from you, right? Like it extends to like, people are always scared because people get ripped off every single day, right? And so I think you're within reason to be careful about like how you share what you do and like your techniques or whatever. But there you have to find the balance of like, okay, you have to be sure enough in yourself to where you know that it's okay if people know how I do something, because I'll never be able to do it how I do it because I can't see what I see, they can't feel how I feel, whatever. And I guess kind of to wrap it up, extending to the way that I have recently started to think about it is that like, the 3D industry is interesting in that there are a bunch of different niches, and because it's like something in relation to like art is that's still kind of new, it's very easy to become a top dog. And so there are a bunch of people who do very specific styles. Like there's this guy called Fuck Render, right? And he's like, this is his actual name is Fuck Render. And he's this dude in like, I want to say Canada, who has this super dope style. He's been like copied a bunch. He's like a pioneer in like his specific niche. But it's the kind of thing where like there are people like him and people like in different pockets of like the 3D art world who, because they have these specific styles, people can try to recreate them. But because of techniques they've learned over time, no one can get the exact thing that they do. And so part of me, as I learned the way I wanted to execute my style, and I had certain tips and tricks or whatever, I was like, maybe I should like, I don't know, do people know about these things? Do I keep these things to myself? Whatever, blah, blah, blah. But what I ended up seeing a lot of, and the way I ended up learning a lot, was I would go into these people's comment sections and people would ask, oh, how did you do this? And they just say, oh, I did this. I used this setting, like these are the numbers, like do this way and you'll get this result. And what you realize, you know, especially over time, is that if you hoard knowledge, you know, like you're not gonna really learn anything because like you're holding onto too much, you can't take in anything for yourself. And at the same time, it's like you're not gonna lose anything by just letting someone else know how to do something, because you're just leaving them a way to do something, but you're not giving them like the reason behind doing something or the whatever. So like to wrap it up, I think gatekeeping is fucking stupid, because if it wasn't for like sharing knowledge, like letting people into stuff, like you wouldn't be here. Any of us wouldn't really be here. And I think that like it's important to like share as much as you can with other people, because it entices you to like go and learn more for yourself, because it's like, well, like if people know how to do this themselves, I should go learn new things so I can not only teach people, but I can supplement the things I already know and build on top of new things. And at the same time, just like make sure I'm not caught slipping and someone like takes the quote unquote spot that I occupy, even though it's not really a thing. So long story short, I think gatekeeping is stupid and you shouldn't do it regardless of what you're like in.
Facts. Like I think, sorry, I thought you were gonna keep going. No, I 100,000% agree with you. Like even in our last episode with Koi, we were just talking about how, you know, success is when all your friends move up, not just you. And I think that's something that's really important when you interact with other creatives. Like, I think it's, definitely important to create boundaries for yourself. Like, you obviously can't, like, pour 100% of effort to, like, every single person that asks you for help. But I think, like, being open and sharing your experiences and your knowledge is so important, because everything in art and design is essentially like a remix from something else, whether or not you like to call it that or not. But
exactly.
I do think that in the past or currently, I still feel that sense of like imposter syndrome where I'm like, am I capable enough to be in this space? Am I capable enough to catch up with all the people around me? But essentially, like, I think I've been really lucky to meet with creatives and successful people that are willing to help. And for the most part, no one's gonna say to you, like, your shit's ugly as fuck, like, I don't want to work. Like, I've never once heard that. But there's something in me that is always scared, like, oh, what if my work's not good enough? But truly, it's a process, and like, creatives have a lot of grace, and I think you need to remind yourselves that. But yeah, gatekeeping is stupid, everyone. That's the end of.
In case you didn't know, that's the PSA.
What is it? TLDR. Too long didn't read, but
here we go. Maybe too long didn't watch, or too long didn't
watch. No, yeah. However, we have reached I think 30 plus minutes at this point.
That's crazy. That was fast as
right?
hell.
Honestly, time goes by fast when you're up in the air. Just kidding.
We'll let you have that one.
I'm always so corny. However, as per usual, we wanted to share our songs of the week. These are just songs that we have on repeat, have been really listening to a lot. So, Ebrima, would you like to start and share?
Yes, mine is, I want to make sure I get the name right. It's by, you know who Leon LaHavas is?
I actually haven't heard of.
Yes.
You do. Clarence, nice, of course.
Yeah, new album.
Yeah, so Leon LaHavas is this super dope. I think she's like I don't remember where she's from, so I'm not going to take a guess. But I remember I went to Afropunk last year, and she's on the lineup. And I remember seeing her name a lot, and I was like curious about it, but I don't think I went to her set. But it was like literally like this week, I think, that I like was looking up like just albums to listen to, and her album came out from this year. I was like, oh, let me give it a shot. And like as soon as I had started it, it was just incredible. But the song I want to recommend is called Bittersweet. And it's beautiful. So yeah, Bittersweet by Leon LaHavas.
Yeah, I love that. She's super dope. I've seen her on, she's on this YouTube channel called, I don't want to butcher the name, it's like La Blogati, I think.
Okay.
I think they're French or something, but they just do like more like intimate kind of concert or, like just a cappella or acoustic versions of songs, and so it's pretty dope. But she was on that, so that's why I got to know her. But I can go next. So my song of the week is called Colors by Black Pumas. It's like I don't know what genre it is. I mean, I was listening to Leon Bridges, and then I kind of queued up next, and it has a lot of like plays on Spotify, so it's fairly popular. But I'm kind of new to it, and I really like their sound. Like it's like one of those like kind of like going to war type of song almost, like kind of like, I don't know. It's hard to describe the feeling, but it's nice.
It's anarchy. I like that.
Yes, I need to check it out. My song of the week is called Like This, and it's actually by a Korean artist named Park Hae-jin. Okay, y'all, don't come at me for my Korean pronunciation because I'm so bad. It's Park Hae-jin. Okay, I think so. But
you said it like I would know. It's like you were wrong or something.
I know. I just know I have Korean eyes on, honestly. But this song is really, I think, unique for most Korean genres that I've listened to. I mostly listen to like Korean R&B or hip hop, but this is kind of alternative and has like similar vibes as Yeji. It's kind of like a little bit electronic and then alternative, so I highly recommend. We will have our we will have. I'm getting nervous.
We're so close. You got it.
We will have our playlist of the week in our bio, in the description bar below.
Fire.
Ebrima, thank you so much for sharing your time with us.
That was so fast. Are you serious?
No, for real. It's 6:10 now.
That's crazy. Damn, I'm kind of sad it was over. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah. I mean, we
again.
Extended.
I'd have to come back for the 3-piece sometime soon. But yeah, this was so much fun. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, hopefully we can do it in person soon. I feel like it'd be way more fun and easier to do. Also, just not have this be over the screen and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Do you guys think you'll film them still? Because there's something nice about it for sure, but I feel like I don't know how you do that like in person.
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely it'd be difficult now, but in the future, I was kind of thinking about like, you know how when they do podcasts and like talk shows, it's always just like you're sitting across from them or like you're sitting next to them kind of thing.
Right.
But, like, what if it's more chill than that? You know, like what if you're just like laying on the floor or something?
That would be kind of dope, like, cause my friend has a drone, and we were lying down at a park, and he was just like filming us from up top. Like that could be kind of cool.
Like,
could be kind of fire.
How do you facilitate an intimate conversation, right? Like something that goes deeper than just like the surface level sort of
right
thing.
Right,
So,
it's like super dim lighting and just like, you know what's crazy is, I know this is like, it's running over time, but I'm just gonna say this. When we were in the A&E office like this last year, right before COVID hit, Jacques bought these like fairy lights, right? And he was like, you know, like when you're hanging out in the office, like you can turn the lights off and just turn the fairy lights on. I was like, oh, okay, cool, whatever. And so one day I'm in there by myself. I'm like, oh, let me turn the fairy lights on. And so I do. And then Jules, who's like Rainy Dog, she comes in. And at the time, I did not know her that well, but because of the lighting, we had a super intimate conversation. And so I was like, you know, it really is atmosphere. Like, if you can get the right atmosphere, you can really like bring shit out of people. And so, like, I think there's definitely some truth to that. You should explore that, you know, definitely explore
yeah, so no one steal my idea. We might have to cut that out.
our intellectual property. But y'all watch out for that. We're super thankful to have these interactions during quarantine and with everything that's happening in the world. And also in our down bar, we will have resources for the link tree for AIM resources that has like a lot of petitions, websites, or resources that you can take a look at to support the Black community now and onward. But yeah, check that out. And we will also have Ebrima socials in the down bar.
Yes, sir. Support your boy.
Sure to
Don't make me feel important and shit. That's crazy.
If you need some fire 3D animation work, then hit him up and say that we sent you.
Yeah.
Yeah, make sure you'll get a discount for it. No, you won't, but you'll get some credit.
But yeah, thank you again, and see you all next week.
Peace.
Peace.